Okay. Shall we start? Yes. Good evening. The first one is our weekly current affairs. With respect to our weekly current affairs, which all topics are news in this week? Which all topics are in news in this week? Now some topics related to polity. Which all topics were in news? Which all topics were in news related to, we call it as the related to. Related to polity, which all topics were in news in this week? The first and foremost, the topic which was in news, we call it as the topic related to, we call it as which one? The Lokapal. Now why the Lokapal topic was in news in this week? Now first one, why Lokapal was in news? Now recently the number of cases which has been taken up by Lokapal has decreased from 2.5 thousand to, it has reduced it to what? It has reduced it to in and around some 20, or I can say the 250 cases. From 2,500 cases to, it has been reduced to, we call it as the 250 number of cases. This is about our first one. The second major important topic which was in news related to polity, that we call it as appointment of the CGI. Now appointment of CGI. Now who will appoint CGI? Online. Good evening. Yes. Yes, good evening. Now who will appoint this CGI? Now President will appoint CGI. Now recently the 53rd CGI has been appointed. Now who will be the 53rd CGI? Who will be the 53rd CGI? We call it as the Suryakant. The Suryakant has been the appointed, we call it as, appointed as what? Appointed as the 53rd Chief Justice of India. Yes, online, good evening. Sunita, good evening. Shivan, good evening. Praveer, good evening. Radhi, good evening. Okay. Now the next topic, now majorly we call it as, which all topics were used from our environment and ecology topics. Which all topics were used from our environment and ecology? First, which all topics? The first one, the major one, Cheetah was in use. Now why Cheetah was in use? Why? Now recently Botswana to get cheetahs from this country back to India. It was majorly, we have gone for an agreement to get 8 cheetahs from which country? Botswana. India has declared the 3rd home of cheetahs. Now which is the 3rd home? Now the 3rd home, the first one we call it as, the first one was Kuno National Park, and the second one related to, we call it Gandhi Sagar, related to, and also we'll discuss about the topic related to one by one. This is about our majorly environment and ecology. Now which all topic when used related to, we call it as science and technology. the topics related to science and technology. The first we call it as Thrishul. Now, why Thrishul was in use? Why Thrishul was in use? Now, recently we call it as the tri-service, that is the Navy, Air Force, and we call it as the Army has conducted a defense exercise on the border between India and we'll see that also what is Thrishul and what are the different military, the agreements have related. Which is the largest, it is the heaviest satellite which has been launched in from the Indian. Now it's a satellite, and that we call it as GSAT. The GSAT, it's called as the major one. We call the CM. What? The 03 also will see the major level. What is science? Topics related to we call it as IR. Some topics related to we call it as IR. The some topics related to IR. Now which topics when used related to IR? Now major one we call it as declared as what? Now recently Lucknow has been as we call it as what? It is the second city from India to declare creative astronomy, creative city of gas. We'll see that one by one. Now, one by one also. We'll start one by one now. Now first one, the first and the foremost one, we call it as the UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. Now the first and foremost one here is why this UNESCO's creative city was in use. Now recently Lucknow has been declared as what? The Lucknow has been declared as we call it as the second. Online, I hope you are getting it. It is the second, the city. Okay. Now the first one I've already said that. Now, why this was in use? Why Lucknow was in use? Why Lucknow was in use? The first one we call it as the Lucknow has been declared as what? Lucknow has been declared as the second city from India to get recognition because what? to get a recognition, we call it city of gastronomy. The city of gastronomy. We'll see that it is what is gastronomy. Now which is the first one. Now what about it is UNESCO? We'll see that one by one also. Yes. Now first one, the first and the foremost one. The first and foremost one. Now what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this creative cities network? Now where this creative city network has been declared? Now first one understand recently. Now recently UNESCO's 43rd general meeting. Now UNESCO's 43rd general meeting, which took place at where? Which took place at, we call it as Samarkand. Where is Samarkand? Okay, where is Samarkand? Now online, I hope it is clear now. It is the first one, 43rd general meeting of UNESCO, which took place at where? Which took place at, we call it as the Samarkand. Now where is the Samarkand? Now Uzbekistan. Now where is Uzbekistan? The Central Asian country. The Uzbekistan, it is present in where? Uzbekistan, it is present in, we call it as, it is Central Asian country. Now in the Central Asian country, we recently organized, we call it as 43rd general meeting of UNESCO. In this 43rd general meeting of UNESCO, now we declared which city as the recent city of gastronomy. Which city? It is majorly, we call it as Lucknow. The Lucknow has been declared as Creative Cities Network. Under the Creative Cities Network, we have given a tag called as, which tag is that, boss? Which tag is that? It is City of Gastronomy. My simple question is, what is gastronomy? It is food related. It is majorly, we call it as the tag called as UNESCO City of, we call it as the which one? The gastronomy. We call it as gastronomy. Now this city has become the second city from, we call it as second city from India to get a tag called as which one? Gastronomy. Now it's the first one. The first one is, we call it as Hyderabad. Now this Hyderabad has got a tag called as gastronomy in which year? In the year 2019. Perfect. In the year, we call it as 2019. First one. And the second one here is, sir, how many creative cities network is present in, we call it as India total, including Lucknow? It is, we call it as, initially we had 8, and now there is an addition of what? The one we call it as Lucknow. Addition of one, we call it as Lucknow. Now it has been added under the tag called as the gastronomy tag. In general, we call it as Creative Cities Network. From gastronomy it is 2. And in general Creative Cities Network, we call it as 9 has been added as of now. Yes or no? This is about our first one. The second major important one, we'll talk about little bit about Lucknow. Sir, my simple one here is, now why this Lucknow has been added recently? Why this Lucknow has been added recently? Now what we will get? Now if we get a tag called as UNESCO City of Gastronomy. First one, why this tag? Why this tag? Because Lucknow is known for, we call it as Awadhi cuisine. Majorly we call it as which cuisine? Awadhi or Awadh cuisine. Awadhi cuisine. Now this cuisine is an integration of, we call it as Hindu and Muslim mixture, or integration of, we call it as the two important religious cuisine. One we call it as what? One we call it as Hindu-Muslim. The cuisine has been integrated and we call it as Lucknow. Majorly, the influence of what? Influence of Awadh. Now where is Lucknow? It is Lucknow, it's in UP. First one, you should know this. And second one, we call it as Hindu-Muslim integration. And the third one, this Lucknow is famous for the n number of dishes, which includes, it is the biryanis, which includes the majorly, the kebab, majorly the fried one, all this is famous for, we call it as what? All this is famous in, we call it as Lucknow. And because of all these things, it has majorly, recently UNESCO has been added under the gastronomy tag. Sir, other than this, if I add any city under gastronomy, what is the advantages I'll be getting? What are the positives of it is getting a creative cities network? The tag. Now what will happen? The first one we call it as, the first one majorly, the food business will start to increase. If I get gastronomy tag, the food business will start to increase. And along with that, the tourism will increase. Yes or no? It is along with those things, the tourism of a particular region will start to increase. Now when automatically tourism increases, what happens? Employment generation. When employment generation happens, automatically the complete region will start to develop. First one is the food, the business will start to increase. Second one, tourism. And the third and the fourth one, we call it as what? The employment generation will start to increase. And fourth one? The fourth one, automatically the GDP or the GDP of a particular district or a particular region will also start to increase. Yes, this is a major, we call it as the advantages of getting a tag. Under we call it as the UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. Yes or no? That's about our first one. The second major important one here is, sir, what is this UNESCO? What is this UNESCO Creative Cities Network? What is this Creative Cities Network? Now the first question is, this Creative Cities Network is given by which international organization? It is given by UNESCO. What does this UNESCO means? United Nations. United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization. United Nations Scientific and we call it as Cultural Organization. When was this UNESCO established? It has been established in the year. It was established in the year, we call it as 1945. It was established in the year 1945. And what is the objective of this UNESCO? What's the objective? Now, as I already said that its objective is education, scientific and we call it what? Cultural organization. Online, I hope you guys are following now. It is now the main objective of, we call it as, this UNESCO we call it as providing support in the field of education and providing it is support in the field of the scientific or science, and a third one we call it as in the field of we call it as culture. Yes or no? Now one of the field we call it as, now via the culture they are providing a status called as Creative Cities Network. One who are creative, one who are scientifically advanced. Now for them we are providing, we are also creating an awareness across the world also. We are creating awareness across the world also. That is one of the major objectives of UNESCO. It is working in the field of education, the science as well as culture. Science as well as culture. Now where is the headquarters of UNESCO? It's in Paris. Where is Paris? It's in France. Perfect. It is in Paris, France. This is about first one called as which one? It is first one we call it as majorly. About we call it as UNESCO. And second one, the second major important one, what is this Creative Cities Network? What do you mean by this Creative Cities Network? What the first one, abbreviation? Now abbreviation we call it as Creative Cities. Creative Cities we call it as network, first one. Second one, now this Creative Cities Network is released by which organization? UNESCO. Released by UNESCO. Now since which year? Now this UNESCO Creative Cities Network, it is released. But it is released since which year? Now it was released since we call it as 2004. It is released, we call it as since. What's the origin year? The since we call it as 2004. It is released since 2004. Now fourth one here is, now how many criteria do we have, or how many sectors do we have to provide this creative cities network? Now how many? Now initially we had 8. Now there is an addition of one more in this year. There is an addition of one more. Now this creative cities network is being provided in how many? Is being provided in, we call it as total 9. Now initially we had 8. Now there is an addition of 1. Now which is that 8? Now that 8 includes first one we call it as crafts and folk arts. We call it as folk arts. Second one we call it as literature. Okay, second one we call it as literature. Third one, the third one it is music. Third one we call it as music. Fourth one we call it as the films. The fifth one we call it as gastronomy. The fifth one which includes gastronomy. The sixth one which includes the media. The sixth one which includes the medium, design. The next one which includes design. The next one we call it as the design, and the last one we call it as majorly we call it as the fashion. All this majorly comes under where? We call it as 8 criteria. Now there is an addition of one more. And that addition we call it as what? Architecture. Now this architecture which has been added, now in which year? Added recently, and that recent one we call it as what? 2025. My basic question is, now from crafts and folk arts which has been added, from literature which has been added, from music which has been added, now from majorly we call it as gastronomy which has been added. Now shall we see one by one now? Now with respect to we call it as, now which all things has been added, now with respect to all those things, now the first one now which has been added from music. Now from music, the first one which has been added, from music, and second one Chennai has also been added from where? Music, and the third one we call it as what? The music. Yes or no? It is first one we call it as Varanasi has been added in the year 2015 from a criteria called as which one? Music. And second one Gwalior from Madhya Pradesh has been added from music, and Chennai has been added from music. Yes or no? First. And the second one we call it as the city of literature. Now which is the city of literature? It is majorly we call it as the Kozhikode. The Kozhikode has been added as what? It is city of literature in which year? In the year 2023. And after that, it is 2 cities has been added from gastronomy. I have already said that. One we call it as what? One we call it as Hyderabad, and the second one we call it as, recent one we call it what? The recent one we call it as Lucknow. Lucknow and Hyderabad has been added under, we call it as gastronomy. And second one, 2 cities have been added majorly with respect to the crafts and folk arts. One we call it as Jaipur. Where is Jaipur? Rajasthan. And second one Srinagar. Now from which state? Now Jammu and Kashmir as a UT, Union Territory. And after that, the last one we call it as Mumbai has been added under where? Mumbai has been added under films. Now, which one has not been awarded any tag as of now? Now from India, now we have not got anything from media. We have not got anything from media. And second one, we have not got anything from, we call it as designs. Now we have not got anything from, we call it as architecture. Now we have not got anything, or I can say any of the city has not been recognized under, we call it as this three. Majorly from the medium, second one from design, and the third one is from architecture. Now be cautious, architecture has been added recently. Architecture has been added recently, and that we call it as 2025. 2025. Yes. Now, is this part clear now? Now I'll summarize. I said that it is this creative cities network. Now is it given only to cities or to the rural areas also? What do you think? It is only to cities. Second one, now which city has been recently declared as, we call it as creative cities network recently? It is Lucknow. Now as of now, how many cities is being recognized under creative cities network? Majorly we call it as how many? It is the majorly we call it as 9. We had initially 8. Can you name 8? And can you name 1? Anyways, you are aware about this one. Now which is that 8? Now majorly we call it as, which is that 8? Now first one we call it as, first one from top to bottom, first one we call it as Srinagar, and second one we call it as Varanasi, third one as you guys said it is Jaipur, fourth one we call it as Gwalior, and the fifth one we call it as Mumbai, sixth one we call it as Hyderabad, and seventh one we call it what? Seventh one we call it as Chennai, and last one we call it as Kozhikode. Now anyways you are aware. Now my simple question is, now Srinagar has been added under which one? Crafts and folk arts, Srinagar. The Jaipur has been added under, we call it as crafts. Now under music, Varanasi, Gwalior, and we call it as what? Chennai. And next one, Kozhikode under, we call it as literature. And Mumbai under films, Hyderabad under gastronomy. This is the first one, which has been declared in which year? 19. And a recent one to be added under, we call it as Lucknow. Done, yes or no? Now is this part clear? Now my third question here is, sir, this UNESCO, it has been recommended by which government and which state? Now be cautious, this has been declared by, we call it as Ministry of Tourism. Ministry of Tourism from which state? UP. Now they have submitted it to, we call it as which one? Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Recommendations. And now finally it has been sent to whom? UNESCO. Now UNESCO declared this as city of gastronomy, that to creative city of gastronomy. Now under which session? 43rd we call it as 43rd UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. Now majorly we call it as 43rd General UNESCO's meeting. Lucknow has been declared as, we call it as city of gastronomy. City of, we call it as gastronomy. Exactly on and exactly yes. You should be aware about all those things. And second, the second major one here is, now when was this Creative Cities Network established? In the year 2004. In the year 2004. Now how many Creative Cities Network do we have across the world? Now we have, across the world I'm saying, across the world more than 400 plus. More than 400 plus. Now out of that, how many is in India? 9. Yes or no, boss? Now how many are in India? It is 9 are from India. Now which one the recently added criteria? Architecture. Now which one recently added criteria? That we call it as architecture. Yes or no, boss? Now if this part is clear, now we'll go for a question. Now solve this. If you solve this, done the game. Online fast. Exactly, it's not exactly 58, it is more than, we call it as 408. To be precise, as 408, 400 plus cities has been declared under, we call it as online exactly, it's okay, it's not an issue. It is more than 400 has been added under Creative Cities Network across the world. And out of that, 9 are from India, and a recent one we call it as Lucknow. That you should be aware. Yes, it's not an issue, online not an issue. Cities only, exactly, yes. See, in the name itself it says that it is creative city. Only cities. Yes. The UNESCO, it's in Paris, exactly. Pravir, exactly. The game changer, exactly, yes. Now I hope this part is clear. Now the simple question is, with reference to Lucknow's inclusion in the UNESCO's Creative Cities Network, consider the following statements. Now I said that Lucknow has been recognized as the UNESCO's Creative City of Gastronomy for its centuries-old Awadhi culinary heritage. Is it right or wrong? Right. Second one, the nomination for Lucknow as officially submitted. I said proposal is done by Ministry of Tourism. It is UP government. But official submission to UNESCO, it is done by which ministry? Ministry of Culture. Ministry of Culture. Now proposal is done by the state government, and later on it is being given by, we call it as Ministry of Culture. Finally to UNESCO. Second one is incorrect. I hope it is clear. The third one, with Lucknow inclusion, India now has a total of 2 cities in the UNESCO's Creative Cities Network. Now I said India has how many? Now India has 9. Nothing but 8 plus what? 1. Yes or no? Now in reality, 2 cities are not from India. 2 cities are from India in gastronomy tag. Yes or no? Now even the third one is also incorrect. Which of the following are correct? Now how many are correct? Now only the first statement is correct. Nothing but only one is correct. Online exactly yes. Pravir exactly yes. Yes or no? Now I hope this UNESCO's Creative Cities Network part is clear now, end to end. Done? Now the second one we call it as the most important topic, and that most important topic we call it as Swasth Nari. The Swasth Nari Shashakt the Parivar Abhiyan. Now what do you mean by Swasth Nari? Swasth Nari means healthy women. The Swasth Nari means healthy women. Now when there is healthy women, automatically it leads to what? Empowered community or empowered family. It leads to, we call it as, it leads to the empowered family. Abhiyan means initiative. Highly important one. Highly important. This year expect a question of this. Swasth Nari, it is majorly the empowered, we call it as the Shashakt Parivar, the empowered family was in use. Why this was in use? Why this was in use? Now recently this initiative has got. Recently this initiative, Swasth Nari, Shashakt Parivar has got. How many Guinness records? The 3 Guinness records for this initiative. 3 Guinness, the world records for this initiatives. My simple question is, now why this is important and why there must be question from this, the scheme part? Why? Because this has become the India's largest health initiative. This has become what? India's largest health initiative. That we'll see one by one. Now first we will talk about, now it is launched in which year? This scheme has been launched in which year? It is September 17th, 2025. It has been launched on, we call it as 17th, we call it as what? September which year? 2025. 17th September or September 17th, 2025. First one. Second one, it is launched by which ministry? It is launched jointly by two important ministries. One we call it as which one? Health and Family Welfare. Supported by we call it as which one? It is Health and Family Welfare, supported by we call it as Women and Child Development. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, supported by we call it as the by ministries. The two ministries have been involved to provide this initiative, Health and Family Welfare, and second one we call it as Women and Child Development. Exactly on, exactly yes. The third major important, the 1 year is, now sir, what is the objective of this initiative? What's the objective? Why this scheme is important from our current affairs point of view? Now why this initiative? Now majorly, now what's the objective? Now objective here is providing preventive health care. Be cautious. Providing preventive. Now what do you mean by preventive? Before occurrence of a disease, it is preventive care is being provided. Now preventive care is being provided to which all sections, which all communities. Now normally it is, as soon as we see it is Swasth Nari, we come to a conclusion saying that it is for women. But fortunately this is being provided to, we call it which one? The women and children. It is provided to, we call it as women and children. Women and we call it as the children. Be cautious. It is preventive care. Preventive care is being provided before occurrence of a crime or before occurrence of, we call it as the health part. It is preventive care is being provided, we call it as provided by the ministry, dedicated ministry. Now sir, it is provided for women and children. Now women and children is fine sir. Now which all type of treatment has been provided? Now for which all people has been provided? Which all people? First, which all people or which all sections have been targeted here? Now it is provided for all. It is provided for all, but few people are being given priority. Now which is that few people are being given priority? It is rural people. It is the rural people. The rural people are being given priority. Second one, along with rural, tribal women are being given priority. The tribal women are being given priority, and along with these things we call it as privileged. Be cautious boss. Ee varsha vandila keli question. The rural people, for sure there must be question this year. First one, it is rural sections are being given a priority. Second one, tribal women, and the third one we call it as underprivileged people are being given the priority to provide, we call it as the treatment. The Swasth Nari Shashakt Abhiyan has been the focused on, we call it as everyone. But priority is being given to which areas? The rural, tribal and underprivileged women are being given priority. The fourth major important one here is, sir, now which all type of services are being provided under this India's largest health initiative? Which all type of, we call it as the health care is being provided. Now first one, to provide health care, don't you think we need to go for screening? First one, we need to go for screening boss. Now what does screening means? Testing. Now which all type of testing or screening is being done for all this, the people? The women, the rural, underprivileged, and we call it tribal women. Now which all type of, we call it as the screening is being taken care. The first type of screening which is done, we call it as related to blood pressure, Second one related to, we call it as the anemia related to sickle celled breast cancer. Fourth one, we call it as different types of, we call it as the cancers. Fourth one, obesity. Now along with these things, n number of testing is being done. Now once the testing is being done, what should I need to do here? It is I need to provide treatment. Now for all those things, the treatment are being provided free of cost. The treatment are being provided free of cost. My simple question is, who will provide treatment? Will the complete treatment is done by the government, or it is being done by the other private players also? What do you think? Now the treatment is being provided. The treatment is being provided via, we call it as Jan Bhagidari. Now what do you mean by Jan Bhagidari? With the help of the different civil society, with the help of, we call it as different private players, and that we call it as Jan Bhagidari. Jan Bhagidari. The people have been involved. It has become a Jan Andolan. It has become a Jan Andolan. Now under this, now who all has been included here? It includes government. It includes private hospitals are included here. Private hospitals were included here. And along with that, SHGs. What is SHGs? Self-help groups are included here. And along with that things, it is even the Anganwadi workers, even the volunteers, even Anganwadi workers, even the volunteers, all these people have been included for providing above what? For providing above, we call it as the treatment, majorly to, we call it as women and children. Now what all type of treatment has been provided, sir? Now the different type of treatment has been provided. The treatment which includes anemic treatment, the cancer related treatment, followed by the mental well-being, followed by that it is hearing aid. Fourth one we call it as anemic, sickle cell anemia, cancer, HIV related, it is breast related cancers. All this type of treatment has been provided under a single scheme. Under a single scheme with the help of people. With the help of people, and that includes government, the private hospitals are included, followed by SHGs, self-help groups, followed by Anganwadi workers, followed by the private volunteers or the individual volunteers were included in providing up of what? Providing up of the treatment towards women and children to make an empowered parivar or an empowered citizens. And that is the objective of this initiative. Yes or no, boss? Now for all those things, it is we got 3 important Guinness World Records, and along with that things, this initiative has become what? This initiative has become, now what is the uniqueness about this? What is the uniqueness about this? Now this initiative has become it is India's largest health insurance, the India's largest health initiative that we call it as the Swasth Nari Shashakt, we call it as the Parivar Abhiyan. This has become we call it what? India's largest health initiative has been launched by the government of India. It is majorly on the September 17th, 2025. Yes or no? Now with respect to the scheme, I have talked about only 5 points here. Now the first point we got is what? The first point, it has been launched by Government of India, the Prime Minister. Now under this we have 2 important ministries. One we call it as Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, supported by Ministry of Women and Child Development. Third one, it has been launched by our Prime Minister on the September 17th, 2025. Third, the fourth one we call it as objectives. What's the objective here? It is different type of the treatment is being provided to the women to make a family, the empowered family. Nothing but Shashakt Abhiyan. The major we are targeting this. Now for that we are going for the various, we call it as, the diseases are being screened at the local level. Now that screening which includes that TB, it can be HIV, it can be cancer, the breast cancer, followed by menstrual hygiene has been created, and all this, the screening has been done. Now when the screening part has been done, we need to provide treatment. Now that treatment has been provided. It is along with, we call it as the government, private players, private hospitals, SHGs were being involved. Followed by that, it was even the volunteers, followed by Anganwadi workers were being involved to make this initiative the India's largest health initiative. The India's largest health initiative. Yes or no? Yes, this is about, we call it as, this is about, we call it as, the major about, we call it as the Nari, or we call it as the Swasth Nari Shashakt the Parivar Abhiyan initiative. Yes or no? Yes. Shall we solve a question? Yes, yes. Exactly online. The Ayushman Bharat, it is the world's largest health insurance scheme. Yes, Praveer, game changer, exactly, yes. Okay. Done? Now what's done to this? Now first one with reference to Swasth Nari, the Shashakt Parivar initiative, I have already said that it is, we call it as what? India's, the largest, which one? Health, we call it as initiative. Health initiative. Consider the following statements. Now they are asking which of the following is are correct. Now the Abhiyan provides mandatorily. Does it provide mandatory? The mandatory is an extreme. The postnatal care services for up to 6 months. Up to, we call it 6 months. After delivery to, we call it as women across all the districts. Now I already said that it provides which care? The preventive care. It's like a health campaign. It's like a health campaign. It does not provide mandatory treatment to all. It's up to 6 months. Again, it's an extreme statement. First one is incorrect. Second one, under this initiative. Under this initiative, I said that private hospitals have been included. And along with the things, who are included? SHGs are included, volunteers are included, can collaborate with government. It is the health facilities to conduct the screening and awareness activities. Is the second one clear or not? And the second one is right. The answer is what? The two only. That only, but the first option is incorrect. I already said that. It is the Swasth Nari. The initiative majorly targets about which care? The preventive care, boss. Rather than we call it as, it is the post care, the postnatal care. Rather we are talking about the preventive care. Yes or no? This is about our second one. The third major important, the one we call it as the Chief Justice of India. Now what do you mean by Chief Justice of India? Why this was in news? It is recently, why this was in news? Now recently, it is the President of India as appointed, what is the, it is the judge, 53rd judge, be cautious. The 53rd, the Chief Justice of India has been appointed by whom? Has been appointed by, we call it as President of India. Now this 53rd Chief Justice of India. Now who is the 53rd one? 53rd one we call it as Surya Kant. Now first one understand. Now first one we call it as the Surya Kant has been appointed as we call it what? Now Surya Kant. And the simple one is, now the Surya Kant will replace the B.R. Gawai on which day? On we call it as November 24th. On we call it as November 24th, the Suryakant will be replacing the B.R. Gawai, because the B.R. Gawai's tenure will end on November 24, 2025. Sir, the Suryakant, what is the tenure of the Suryakant? It is majorly. The Suryakant tenure will be from November 24, 2025 up till we call it as February 10, up till which year? 2027. Now he will be in office in and around for how many months? In and around for, we call it as how many months? 15 months. He will be in office for how many months? 15 months in office. That is a major initiative you should know. So second one, this Suryakant is from which state? First one, Suryakant is from which state? And second one, now which is the popular judgment this Suryakant has chaired? Now first one, he is the first Chief Justice from Haryana. He will be the it is first Chief Justice from which state? Haryana. First one. Second one, second major important one. Now which all judgments has been chaired by, we call it as Suryakant. Which is the judgment? Now major judgment, we call it as abrogation of Article 370. It has been chaired by Suryakant. Now he has chaired which all judgments? He has chaired Article 370, abrogation. Article 370 related to what? Article 370 related to Jammu and Kashmir, special status to Jammu and Kashmir. Yes or no? This has been abrogated in which year? 2019, first one. Second one, he also chaired, it is AMU judgment. What is AMU judgment? It is Aligarh Muslim University judgment related to providing minority status to which one? AMU. Minority status to, we call it as AMU. That you should know, AMU. Now this AMU has been started by which freedom fighter? It is Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. That you should be aware. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, Aligarh Muslim University. Now this Aligarh Muslim University is a minority tag. Again this has been chaired by the Suryakant. And the third one, the third major important one, he is famous for upholding, or I can say upholding constitutional morality. Constitutional morality. He is famous for upholding which one? The constitutional morality. He is famous for upholding, we call it as constitutional morality. Constitutional morality. Be cautious. 53rd Chief Justice of India, it is Suryakant. And second one, he is the first one from Haryana. And third one, we call it as he has chaired the major important judgments. The first one we call it as providing minority status to AMU, and the second one we call it as providing special status to, we call it as the majority, providing special status to the Jammu and Kashmir has been abrogated. Under us we call it as leadership itself. And the third major important one we call it as, it is the special, we call it as electoral role in Bihar. The special, the intensive electoral role. Again it has been shared by, we call it as the Suryakant. Now along with these things, he is famously known for upholding constitutional morality. What do you mean by constitutional morality? What is constitutional morality? Now upholding the values of constitution. Upholding the values of constitution, the Suryakant is famous for upholding constitutional morality. Yes, exactly, yes. Yes or no? Exactly, the Nalsa judgment or the Nalsa judges also, it is the Suryakant. That you should know with respect to our, the first part we call it as the news part. The second one we call it as, little bit information related to, we call it as, little bit information related to which one? It is CGI. The first question here is, who was the first Chief Justice of India? It is majorly we call it as, it is Kania. The majorly we call it as was the first Chief Justice. Now Harilal J. Kania, that you should know. Now first one we'll see that one by one. Now Chief Justice of India. The Chief Justice of India. Now who is this Chief Justice of India? Who is this Chief Justice? Now he is the head of Supreme Court and he is the head of complete judiciary as such. First one, now who is this Chief Justice? He is the head of, we call it as judiciary, head of judiciary, and he is the head of what? Supreme Court. First one. Second one, now who can be appointed as Chief Justice of India? It is only the senior most judge. Understand my word here. It is only. It is who can be appointed as Chief Justice of India? Now only the senior most judge. The judge of Supreme Court can be appointed as what? Can be appointed as the Chief Justice of India. I am using a term called as only. He should be the, it is Chief Justice of India based on seniority. Third one, now who appoints the Chief Justice of India? Now who appoints Chief Justice of India? The appointment is done by, we call it as President of India. President of India based on the, we call it as procedure. Based on the procedure which has been established. Now this procedure which is not present in our, which is not present in our Indian Constitution. But what's the procedure we have with respect to appointment of Chief Justice of India? What is the procedure we have? Now the first procedure we call it as the outgoing Chief Justice of India. The outgoing Chief Justice of India will recommend. Now who is the outgoing Chief Justice? B.R. Gawai, the 52nd Chief Justice of India. He will recommend whom? The senior most judge. The senior most judge as the Chief Justice of India. To which ministry? The Minister of Law. Now this Minister of Law will recommend it to the Prime Minister. This Prime Minister will recommend it to whom? It is President. Now this President will proceed with we call it as appointment. Proceed with the appointment, and only the senior most judge can be appointed as, we call it as, the appointed as what? The Chief Justice of India. Now who has become, we call it as the Chief Justice of India, 53rd Chief Justice of India. The 53rd Chief Justice of India, we call it as the Chief Justice of India, we call it as the majorly, the Suryakant. Now who is the first Chief Justice of India? Be cautious. The first Chief Justice of India, we call it as Harilal, the J. Kania. The first one. Now who has become the 52nd Chief Justice of India? The B.R. Gawai. Now who has been appointed as 53rd one? The Suryakant. At least remember this, at least the factuals. Now second one here is, sir, after this, what is the criteria we have to appoint a particular person as the Supreme Court judge? What is the criteria, what is the qualification we have? The criteria or qualification we have here is, the individual should be what? Citizen of India. First one, he must be what? Citizen of India. He must be, we call it as citizen of India. Second one, now to become a Supreme Court judge, there are 4 criteria we have. One, we call it as at least 5 years as what? High Court judge. He should have been served as, we call it as, at least 5 years as a High Court judge. Done. And third criterion, third criteria, you should have served as we call it as the 10 years as we call it as advocate. Advocate in which court? High Court. 10 years as an advocate of High Court can be appointed as Supreme Court judge. Along with that things, we also have the fourth criteria. That fourth criteria we call as what? Eminent jurist. In the eyes of President, be cautious. Eminent jurist can also be eminent. The jurist can also be appointed as what? Can also be appointed as we call it as the Chief Justice of India or the Supreme Court judges. Supreme Court judges. Now on this basis of I can say four criteria, the collegium recommends to whom? Now what do you mean by collegium? Now is the collegium present in our constitution? No. It has been evolved in second and third judges case. Second and third judges case, now it's a judicial innovation. They will recommend it to, we call it as law minister. Law minister to prime minister, prime minister to president, and we can appoint a particular Supreme Court judge. The person as we call it as Supreme Court judge. Now what's the tenure we have? What is the tenure we have with respect for Chief Justice or for we call it as the Supreme Court judges? 65 years. 65 years is the tenure for we call it as the Chief Justice of India as well as for the Supreme Court judges. As well as for the Supreme Court judges, this is the major criteria we have related to we call it as related to the Chief Justice of India as well as related to the Supreme Court judges. Exactly only exactly yes. Online, thank you. Okay, let's see. I hope it is clear. Okay, 1 and 2 only, 1 and 3 only, 1 only and 1 and it is 2 and 3 only. Okay, we'll see. Even I don't know. Now with respect to they are asking about which of the following are incorrect. Yes or no? Now with reference to the Justice, the Suryakant's appointment as the 53rd, we call it as the Chief Justice of India, consider the following statements. Now read carefully. Justice Suryakant will be the first Chief Justice of India from the state of Haryana and he is known for emphasis on, we call it as what? Constitutional morality. Is the first one clear or not? Yes, it's right. Second one, he was a part of constitutional bench that struck down the abrogation. No, it's not a struck down of abrogation, rather which upheld the abrogation of Article 370 as unconstitutional. Now hope you are getting it. It is second option is incorrect. The third one, the Chief Justice of India is appointed by, we call it as President under Article 124 subclause 2 of the Constitution after mandatory consultation. Mandatory consultation from Prime Minister, okay. Why this leader of opposition? Yes or no, boss? Now who is the leader of opposition? Who can become the leader of opposition? Okay, where is the concept of leader of opposition mentioned? Is it in Constitution, in the rules or in the Act? Now which Act? It is mentioned under the act, we call it as Leader of Opposition Act of 1977. Leader of Opposition Act of 1977, nothing but statutory body. And second one, who can be declared as opposition leader? Leader of opposition, one who has minimum of 1/10 votes or 10% of votes. 10% of votes in the house. They can be declared as what? They can be declared as leader of opposition. Who will declare a particular person as leader of opposition? The presiding officer. The presiding officer will declare it as the leader of opposition. For the first time, the concept of leader of opposition has been originated in Kerala in the year 1969. UPSC question. In the year 1969, in a state called as Kerala, for the first time, concept of leader of opposition has been originated in Kerala in the year 1969. In the year 1969. Now this leader of opposition is being given a tag called as the cabinet, the rank. It has been given a rank called as cabinet minister rank. They are being given what rank? They are being given what rank? The cabinet rank. They are being given, we call it as cabinet rank. Yes or no, boss? Now is the third option right or wrong? Second one incorrect, third incorrect. What's the answer for this? That is 2 and 3 are incorrect. 2 and 3 are incorrect. First one is correct. Yes or no? I hope there is no doubts. Yes or no? Is this 3 topics clear? First one we have talked about. Which topic we have discussed? Now, first one we have talked about majorly Creative Cities Network. While discussing about Creative Cities Network, we have talked about the 3 important things. One we call it as, what is this? UNESCO. Favorite UNESCO topic. First one we have discussed on UNESCO, and second one we have talked about Creative Cities Network. Now we have also talked about little bit information about, we call it as Lucknow also. Done. Second one we have talked about which topic? It is Swasth Nari Shasakt Parivar Abhiyan. Now while discussing about this, we have talked about the complete aspects of, we call it as this, the scheme. We have talked about this. Is this part clear? The third one we have talked about a topic called as Chief Justice of India. While talking about Chief Justice of India, we have talked about the Supreme Court. We have talked about leader of opposition also. Yes or no, boss? Now the 3 topics we have discussed until now. And the fourth topic will be the most important topic from economy. Fourth important topic from economy. Yes or no? Now that fourth important topic we call it as the GI tag. The GI tag, we will discuss about apeda. We will discuss about the different varieties of lime also. Different varieties of lime also. Now the first and foremost question here is, we call it as, why this was the news? Why this was the news? Recently, apeda. Now what is apeda? Agricultural Produce Export Development Authority. Export Development Authority has airlifted the 2 important, the lime products. One we call it as Indi lime or Indi Kazi lime from Karnataka. One from Karnataka, that we call it as what? Indi Kazi lime. For sure question. Indi Kazi lime. And second one we call it as one from Tamil Nadu. One from Tamil Nadu, and that we call it as the Pulyan Kudi lime. That we call it as Pulyan Kudi lime. Pulyan Kudi lime. Now while discussing about this topic, we will talk about 3 important topics here. One we call it as about apeda. One we will discuss about, we call it as the apeda topic. First one will be this. And second one we will talk about Indi-Kazi line. And third, we will talk about the Pulyan-Kudi. Now we will also talk about the fourth topic called as what? GI tax. Yes or no? Now first news here is, recently APEDA has become APEDA has airlifted two important, the line now from India, and it is from India, majorly from Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, to which country? To UK. It is to a country called as UK. To a country called as UK, United Kingdom. Now we'll see that one by one. This has become what? The first ever airliftment of APEDA. First ever airliftment done by APEDA. Now we'll see that one by one also. Yes. Now first one, give a heading called as, what is APEDA? What is APEDA? First one we call it as APEDA. What's APEDA? First one is our abbreviation. What's the abbreviation of APEDA? Agricultural Produce Export Development Authority. Export Development Authority. Second one is, which ministry was? Ministry of Commerce. Be cautious, it's not a Ministry of Agriculture. Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And which department? Under Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT. Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade Department. Second. Now what type of body is that? Now if it is statutory body, there must be an act. Now in which year this APEDA Act has been brought in? It is 1985. APEDA Act of which year? 1985. But this organization came into effect in which year? Next year. That is, we call it as 1986. APEDA Act, if that is an act, if there is an act, we call it as statutory body. And after this, where is the headquarters of APEDA? APEDA's headquarters is in New Delhi. APEDA's headquarters is in New Delhi, exactly, yes. Perfect online, yes, all these are important topics. Miss Madhura Mugit Kata. It is 1986, came into effect in 1986. Now what's the objective of this APEDA? What's the objective? Now supporting up of agricultural, the export. Objective here is, it is export and development related one. Export and development of which all products? The majorly we call it as agricultural products, which includes honey, which includes wax, which includes sugar, which includes vegetables, which includes fruits. All this are being exported across India, or it is from India to the foreign countries. Now it has been supported by which authority? Supported by, we call it as APEDA. Yes or no? Now this we call it as APEDA, Agricultural Produce Export Development Authority. Where is headquarters? Headquarters is in New Delhi. Under which ministry? Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Done first one. Second one, the two important GI, the lemon, one we call it as what? One we call it as Indi lime. And the second one we call it as the Pulyan-Kudi lime. The first one we call it as the Pulyan-Kudi lime. Highly important one. Now shall we see one by one now? Now first and foremost one, this lime is from which state? It is Karnataka. From which district? Vijaypura district. From Karnataka. Vijaypura district. Now majorly, this is from Karnataka. What about this Pulyankudi? The Pulyankudi, it is majorly. It is, we call it as from Tamil Nadu. The Pulyankudi village of Tamil Nadu. Pulyankudi village of Tamil Nadu. First one. Second one. Now in which soil we can grow this lime? In which soil? Now, Indi lime has been grown in, we call it as, which soil? The black soil. It is grown in, we call it as the soil. And the second one we call it as Pulyankudi lime, which is grown in which soil? It is grown in, we call it as red soil. It is grown in, we call it as the soil. Second one. Third one, what are the features of this Indi lime and Pulyankudi lime? What are salient features? This is about location. Second one about soil. The third one about salient features. Now, what are the different salient features we have? What are salient features we have? The first and foremost salient features of Indi lime, we call it as, it is superior variety of lime. This lime we call it as what? Superior variety of lime. Superior variety which is known for its fragrant aroma. It is known for its aroma. It is known for its aroma. It is known for its aroma. Now not only this aroma, it is highly juicy also. It is highly juicy also. Highly juicy lime. Now when it is juicy lime, sir, is it acidic or moderate acidic? What do you think? Is it highly acidic or moderate acidic or less acidic? It is moderate acidic. Moderate acidic. It is moderate acidic. Now sir, all these things are fine, sir. What is the advantages of Indi lime? What's the advantage of Indi lime? Now, advantages of Indi lime, which includes Indi lime majorly, which includes the Indi lime. It is majorly which is used as medicinal property, which is used in medicinal. And second one, which is used in culinary products. What do you mean by culinary? Food, preparation of food, lemon rice. Culinary products, medicinal, the culinary, as well as we call it as, it is also used as culturally benefit also. Cultural festivals, during festivals it is used. Cultural festivals, this lime has been used. This lime is being used. This lime is being used, and that we call it as what? That we call it as, the major one called as Indi lime. Indi lime. Now this Indi lime has been given a GI tag in which year? In the year 2023. In the year we call it as 2023. First. Second one we call it as the Pulyankudi lime. The Pulyankudi lime, I have already said that it's from which state? Tamil Nadu. It is grown in which soil? Red soil. What are salient features? What is the salient features? Now salient features here is, it is thin. This lime is thin and peely. The thin, and we call it as the peely. And second one we call it as, it is highly acidic. It is highly acidic in nature. It is highly acidic in nature. But the positive here is, it is high in antioxidant and vitamin C, ascorbic acid. It is high in, we call it as, vitamin C and antioxidants. What is the positive of this? Positive of this Pulyankudi lime here is, the Pulyankudi lime here is, it is rich in which vitamin? Vitamin C and it is rich in antioxidants. Now if that is the case, it is used for preparation of oil. It is used in preparation of oil, and it is also used in preparation of different types of medicines. Different types of medicines. Yes or no? Now when this Pulliyankudi lime has been provided a GI tag, this year itself, in the year 2025, what does GI means? Online fast, geographical indication tag. Geographical indication, next one getting called as GI tag. Now I hope this two parts is clear now. Yes. Now first we'll solve and later on we'll discuss about GI. Fast. Online fast. Why both are wrong? Because they are interchanged. The same thing applies in your exam also. It is as soon as you see two options related to two products, automatically 99.99% it would have been interchanged. 99.99% I'm saying interchanged. Now if I replace this Indi lime and Pulliyankudi interchangeably, both these options becomes right. Now we'll see. Consider the following statement regarding Indi lime and Pulliyankudi lime. The first one, Indi lime cultivated in Vijaypura. This is Karnataka, this is clear. But it is known for thin peel. Now strong acidity and high juicy content, it is the content for Pulliyankudi. And second one, Pulliyankudi lime, it is grown in, we call it as Tenkasi district of Tamil Nadu, and is famous for high aroma, balanced acidity and cultivation in black soil. It is Indicasi. Yes or no, boss? Now it is the next one given called as GI. Now both this GI. Now what's the answer for this? We are asking incorrect. It is both are incorrect. Both are incorrect. We have just interchanged this. The next one given called as GI tag. Next one given called as GI tag. What does GI tag means? Geographical indication tag. Yes or no? Now this GI tag has been established under which agreement at international level? It is which agreement? Understand my question first. Now I said that this GI tag has been established under which agreement at the world level? Now we have two important agreements. One we call it as in the year 1883. In the year 1883, and the agreement we call it as the Paris Convention. The Paris Convention on Industrial Products. First one, this GI tag has been established in 1883. Under the convention we call it as what? The Paris Convention. This Paris Convention talks about which products? Industrial products. Industrial products. Second one, in the year 1995, we have established one of the most dedicated, the international organization. Which is that? WTO, the World Trade Organization. On 1st January 1995, we have established an organization called as World Trade Organization. Under this World Trade Organization, we have established an agreement called as TRIPS. We have established an agreement called as the TRIPS. What is this TRIPS? Trade related intellectual property rights. We have established an agreement called as trade related intellectual property rights. We have established the TRIPS agreement. Now under this TRIPS agreement, we established a tag called as which tag? GI tag. We have established a tag called as GI tag. I hope the first origin is clear. Now shall we discuss about GI? Now, which state is the highest number of GI? Which is the first GI tagged? Darjeeling. Which year? Third one. How many GI products are present in India? Fourth. Now, for which all product GI can be provided? Is it for agriculture, industry, or services, or all? Fourth. Is GI provided for Indian products, foreign products, or both? Yes or no? Now keep thinking about all the things, but I'll cover the basics and later on we'll discuss that. Done? Now first one we call it as, what is the abbreviation? What's the abbreviation here? Geographical indication tag. Exactly, Anna, let's see. It is geographical indication tag. Geographical indication tag. Now the GI has been established under which ministry? Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Ministry of Commerce and Industry, DPIIT. Department for Promotion for Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT. Third one. Now, which is the act which talks about GI tag? UPSC question twice. Which is the act? The GI, Geographical Indication of Goods. Geographical Indication of Goods, Act of which year? 1999. Geographical Indication of Goods, Act of 1999. Kelila Keli GI bagi varsha. GI of 1999. Fourth one. Now sir, this GI has been given for what purpose? The unique origin. GI is being provided for unique origin. GI is being given for what purpose? Unique origin. The goods must be what origin? Unique origin. It must be unique origin. Now sir, GI tag has been given for individuals or community or both? It is not given for individual. It is given for community. It is given only for whom? Only for, we call it as community. It is only given for community. It is only given for community, not to individuals. Can you give some examples of GI tags? It is Banaras sarees. Second one, which includes Mysore Pak. Third one, Ramnagara toys, Chanpanda toys. And fourth one, which includes it is Ilkal sarees. The fifth, Nagpur oranges. The sixth one, Darjeeling tea. All this comes under where? GI tax was. Now this is given for communities. Given for community. Now which is the first GI tagged product? Which is the first GI tagged products? That we call it as Darjeeling tea. In which year? In 2004-5. In 2004-5. Yes or no? It is this act itself came in the year 1999. 2004-5. And second one, this GI office is present in where? It's in Chennai. This GI office is present in Chennai. Which state has the maximum GI? It is UP followed by? It is Tamil Nadu. Now how many Karnataka has? It is 48. UP, Tamil Nadu has the highest one. Karnataka has 48 GI tags. The fifth one, now is it provided only to agriculture or industry or to goods? It is provided to goods, boss. provided to, we call it as the goods. Provided to goods. The goods can be Indian or foreign also. The goods can be Indian or foreign. We have given GI tag to Italian wine. We have given GI tag to. Take an example of agricultural products called Darjeeling tea. Take an example of industrial product called as Chanpatna toys. Nothing but it is given to whom? It is given to both. It is given to, we call it as agriculture as well as what? Industry. Done. And after this, it can be given to foreign products also. It can be given to foreign products also. But in India, we have more than 600 plus GI products as of 2025. As of 2025, we have more than. Exactly, yes. Now, sir, which your Indie Lime, it is 2023. 2023. That you should know. Yes or no? Yes. It can be provided not for handicrafts, it can be provided for goods. It is provided for goods, but that good should be unique origin. That good should be unique origin. Examples I said, examples. It is majorly we call it as the Mysore Pak from Mysore. Second one we call it as the Badgi Menshinkai. Third one oranges, Nagpur oranges. Fourth one we call it as Rasgullas, Haldi, turmeric. Yes or no? And after that we call it as Basmati rice. Now majority, all the products have been declared as GI. Majority or all in India. That's the reason I said it is more than 600 plus GI products is present in India. Yes or no? Now is this part clear? Now we were discussing about which one? Now online I have already said that it is GI tag has been provided in 2025 for it is Pulyankudi line. And second one, this Pulyankudi village is called as City of Lemon. This Pulyankudi village, it is called as City of Lemon in Tamil Nadu. Nothing but a complete village, they grow only lemon, nothing else. City of Lemon. Though it's a village, it's a city. Though it's a village, it has been declared as City of Lemon in where? Tamil Nadu. City of the village in Tamil Nadu. Exactly. Yes. Not an issue online, not an issue. It's done now. Done. Now with respect to this topic, we have talked about which all things? We have talked about the Apeda. We have talked about Indi Kazi lime. Now be cautious. The Vijaypura lime or Indi lime, it is the second lime to get a GI tagged after Assam Kazi lime. After Assam's Kazi lime. Highly important. Last year it was in use. And third one, we have talked about GI, we have talked about the TRIPS, we have talked about Paris Convention, end to end. Yes. Now we are done with the complete, we call it as topic as such. Now I hope there is no doubts with respect to it is some 4th or 5th topic. Done with game now. Done. Online, is there any doubts now? Yes. Exactly. Not even 1 rupee. Not even 1 rupee was. Now if you go to Pulyankudi, now if you give 10 rupees, they'll give you some 100 lemons. Thodi anta. Because that complete village is called as, it is the city of lemon. They grow only lemon, major lemon. That's the reason. Yes. The Indi Kazi lime, you should know that it's not from Bihar, it's from Assam. Yes. Done. The next one we call it as Gogabil Lake. Gogabil Lake. Now why this Gogabil Lake was in use? It is first one we call it as the news. Now recently Gogabil Lake has been declared as what? The 94th, the Ramsar site. 94th Ramsar site. Yes or no? It is 94th Ramsar site. Now while discussing about this topic, we'll talk about the Ramsar end-to-end. Ramsar end-to-end. And second one we'll talk about, it is what is wetlands. We will talk about India specific factuals. We will talk about Gogabil also. Now which one do you want first? First one Gogabil? Okay. First one getting called as Gogabil. The first one we call it as what? The first one we call it as Gogabil. Now with respect to Gogabil, now what is the location of Gogabil? Gogabil, it is present in Bihar. If you want, you can also discuss about Bihar also. Bihar highly is in news in the recent times. Highly controversial, highly is in news as Bihar. Location, we call it as location. Now Katiyar district of Bihar. The Katiyar district of Bihar. Second one, now this Gogabil has been declared as what? Initially this Gogabil has been declared as first community reserve. First community reserve from Bihar to be declared as what? Ramsar site. To be declared as, we call it as Ramsar site. Exactly, yes. Ramsar site. First one or second one. The third one, this Gogabil lake, it's a lake which has been created by a river, and this lake we call it as Oxbow Lake. Hope it is clear. This Oxbow Lake, it is created by a river, and this Oxbow Lake is surrounded by two important rivers. The two important rivers, now towards the northeastern one, which river? Mahananda. Towards the northeast one, we have a river called as Mahananda. Towards northeast of this Oxbow Lake called as Gogabil. Towards the northeast of this Gogabil, we have a river called as Mahananda. It's not Mahanadi. Where is Mahanadi? Odisha. It is Mahananda. Now this Mahananda is a tributary of which river? Brahmaputra or Ganga? Let us think. Now you should answer this before the end of this topic. Second one we call it as Ganga. Now towards the south, we call it as Ganga river. Towards the south, we call it as Ganga river. Third or fourth one. Now the fifth one, this Gogabil, it is famous for huge amount of biodiversity. This Gogabil is famous for, we call it as what? Famous for huge amount of biodiversity. Now huge amount of migratory birds, you can observe from here itself. Huge amount of what? It is famous for huge amount of biodiversity. It is famous for, we call it as what? Famous for migratory birds. Famous for, we call it as migratory birds. Siberian crane. Migratory, the birds, Siberian crane. Migratory birds, Siberian crane. And after that, it is also famous for recharging the groundwater also. Recharging up of which water? Groundwater. Now I have said some 5 points. Location, it is, we call it as the Katayar district of, we call it as Bihar. Second one, it is the first community from Bihar to be declared as what? Ramsar site, that too 94th Ramsar site. Third one we have talked about, it is created by a river, majorly the two rivers called as Mahananda river. Now what is the tributary of Mahananda? Now it's a tributary of Ganga. It's a tributary of Ganga. At least you should know about Ganga, boss. It is Ramnanda, Gomti, Gagra, Gandak, Kosi, Mahananda. But Teesta is a tributary of Brahmaputra. Teesta is a tributary of Brahmaputra. What about right bank tributary of Ganga? Right bank tributary of Ganga, it is Yamuna, the Son river, Damodar river. It is Chambal. Yes or no? Chambal is a tributary of Yamuna. Yamuna is a tributary of Ganga. That you should know. Ken Betwa. Yes or no, boss? At least basics, at least you should know. At least Ganga. Which is the largest and longest river of India? Which is the largest and longest river of India? Ganga. Which is the largest and longest river of South India? Godavari. Yes or no? Which is called as Ganga of South? Godavari or Kaveri? Pakka? It is Dakshina Ganga, it is Godavari. Ganga of South is Kaveri. But it's not a translated version. If it is English, it is Kaveri. It is Dakshina Ganga, but normally in some books, we mention it as Godavari. We mention it as Godavari. That you should know. It is majorly location, you should know that. Biodiversity, it is rich for migratory birds. Majorly Siberian crane. Followed by, we call it groundwater. Followed by, we call it as groundwater. Exactly, yes. Exactly online, yes. There should not be a number of answers for a particular question. It should fix. All those are basics, boss. You should revise. Done? Gogabil, first one. Now, second one we call it as about Ramsar sites. About Ramsar, the site. Now, what is this Ramsar? Where is Ramsar? Ramsar is a place which is present in Iran. Now, this Ramsar majorly talks about, Ramsar Convention talks about majorly what? Ramsar Convention, which has been signed in which year? 1971. Now 1971, this Ramsar talks about which one? Wetlands. Which talks about wetlands. Third one, this Ramsar Convention came into effect in which year? In the year 1975. In the year we call it as 1975, came into effect. Now is India the founding member? It is no. Now India joined this convention in the year 1982. In the year we call it as 1982. Now you should revise, boss. All these are basics. Now when are we celebrating? It is World Wetland Day. February 2nd. Why February 2nd? Because on February 2nd, 1975, this Ramsar Convention came into effect. And on the recognition of this February 2nd, every year we are celebrating it as what? Every year we are celebrating it as World Wetland Day. We are celebrating it as, we call it as World Wetland Day. Exactly online we are celebrating it as World Wetland Day. When did India join the Ramsar Convention? In the year 1982. In the year 1982. Yes. Now, which state has the maximum wetlands? Now, Tamil Nadu. Followed by Tamil Nadu? Tamil Nadu, UP. Now, little bit facts about wetlands. Now, which state has the maximum wetlands? Tamil Nadu, followed by, we call it as UP. Second one. Now, how many wetlands do we have in India? As of now? 94th. Third one. Which is the largest wetland of India? Based on area? Sundarbans. Based on area, it is Sundarbans. Largest based on area, it is Sundarban. Smallest with respect to area? It is Renuka wetland. Where is Renuka wetland? It is the smallest. It is Renuka. It's in Himachal Pradesh. Now, which country has the largest wetlands in the world? It is Finland or UK? It is UK has 175 plus. Yalla tappu heltiralla guru, mattenu ottidira? UK has 175 plus. It is 175 plus. It is UK. And the second one, now majorly with respect to, we call it as, which is the largest wetland based on area at a world level? at the world level? At the world level, it is in, we call it as South America. It's in South America. It is the largest based on, we call it as what? Largest based on area. Largest based on area. Exactly, yes. It's in Bolivia. The majorly we call it as, it's in Bolivia. Now at least this facts you need to remember. Now sir, idella okay sir. Now this wetlands, it is implemented by which ministry? Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Yes or no boss? Now first one, remember factuals. We have 94 in number. The largest one is Sundarbans. Smallest one is the Renuka, it's in Himachal Pradesh. Followed by UK has the highest number of wetlands. Followed by it is the largest based on area, it is Pantanal. It's in Bolivia. Now major, to be precise, it is surrounded by 3 countries. Pantanal is the largest area, number it is UK, and followed by that is Tamil Nadu has the highest number, followed by it is UP. Followed by that it is now in Asia. Now in Asia, India has the largest number of wetlands. In Asia, India has the largest number of wetlands. In Asia, India has the largest number of wetlands, that is 94 in number. 94 in number, exactly yes. Online perfect, yes. The Vali, Rachna, yes. The PTS, Siam, perfect, yes. Now this is about, we call it as, majorly about, we call it as the wetlands. We have talked about Ramsar Convention. We have also talked about, majorly we call it as the Guga Bill also. Now solve this. I hope there is no doubts. Done? Yes, yes. Now, I hope it is clear. First one, consider following statements regarding the India's wetland conservation efforts and Gogabil Lake. Now, Gogabil Lake was the first in Bihar. To be declared as a community. The reserve, it is before declaring it as what? It is, we call it as, the majorly we call it as the Ramsar recognition. First one, we'll see that the declaration of Gogabil Lake as Ramsar site aligns with India's commitment. Now, is first one right or wrong? Okay, second one, the declaration of Gogabil as a Ramsar site aligns with India's commitment under the biodiversity and sustainable development goals. Second option is 100% correct. But third one, observe the Wetland Conservation Management Rules 2017 were introduced under WPA. No, that is introduced under where? EPA Act of which year? Now what do you mean by EPA? Environmental Protection Act 1986. Now as soon as you remove this third, now you will get the answer. Option 1. Yes, sure, nothing but 1 and 2 is correct. Gogabil was initially declared as community reserve and later on it is upgraded as what? It is Ramsar site. Now what is the number? 94th. 94th Ramsar site we call it as, the 94th Ramsar site we call it as majorly. It is the Gogabil. Now it is majorly we call it as, before to this, the Bihar has also got a wetland and that we call it as Kunwar Lake. The Kunwar Lake, again it is from Bihar. Kunwar Lake, again it is from Bihar, again it is one of the largest, it is Oxbow Lake. One of the India's largest Oxbow Lake. It has been declared as wetland. It has been declared as wetland exactly on and exactly yes. Yes, exactly perfect. It is EPA. Now it is not 86, it is 94th in number, boss. It is 94th in number. Now it is Kunwar Lake. Again Kunwar Lake, it has been declared as, we call it as, the major, it's in Bihar. Now again it is one of the largest, we call it as the Oxbow Lake of India as well as Asia also. One of the largest, again this being created by, we call it as created by, it is Ganga itself. The next one about Bihar. Next one about little bit about Bihar. Little bit about Bihar. Adibiteli. First one we call it as, which is the first, okay, first one, it is Makana. Now which state is the largest producer of Makana? Bihar, what percentage? It is 90%. Makana is called as lotus seed. Now where have we established fox seed also? Now Makana board we have established at where? Patna. Makana board in Patna, Bihar. Makana board, Patna, Bihar. First one. Which is the first state to announce mobile voting? Mobile voting, Bihar. Mobile voting, it is Bihar. And second one, which is the first state to establish SMR? Small and modular reactor. Again, Bihar. The small and modular reactor. Again, Bihar. Small and modular reactor, again Bihar. Fourth one we call it as, the fourth one related to Bihar, where have we established Vikramashila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary and Research Center. Vikramashila Gangetic and Research, the Center for Ganga Dolphin. Be cautious. Vikramashila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, and we call it as Research Center. Again, it has been established in Patna, Bihar. Patna, Bihar. Fourth one. The fifth major important one. Now, what is the recent status of Ganga dolphin? It is endangered. Now, which state has declared Ganga dolphin as their state animals? Uttar Pradesh and Assam. Uttar Pradesh and Assam. And after that, related to Bihar, now we have the first university called as Nalanda University, under UNESCO World Heritage Site also. Nalanda. And after that, Bodh Gaya. It is Bodh Gaya. Now what is this Bodh Gaya? It is Bodh Gaya. Now this Bodh Gaya is famous for which community or which religion? Buddhism. Why it is famous for Buddhism? Because Buddha attained enlightenment. Buddha attained enlightenment, exactly, yes. Exactly. Endangered part, yes, exactly. Ira, good evening, yes. Yes or no? Now all these things at least you should know related to, we call it as the Bihar part. Related to, we call it as the Bihar. Now is the first state to go for socio-economic caste census? Socio-economic caste census, Bihar. Now which state has the highest density of population? Bihar. Highest density. Now which state is declared as highly poverty rich? It is the state. Again it is, we call it as the lowest power, I can say highest poverty, we call it again Bihar. Highest poverty. All this is majorly comes under, we call it as Bihar part. I hope it is clear. It is SMR, small modular reactor, highly important, and it is mobile voting. The mobile voting, highly important, it is Bihar. Mobile voting, it is highly important, it is Bihar. And other than that, it is anyways, you know the things. Done. And after this, the next topic we call it as, it is the major one, International Aryan Summit. International Aryan Summit. Now why this International Aryan Summit was in news? Now understand the first news. Now recently we celebrated. Now why this was in news? Now we celebrated two important things here. One, we call it as the 200th birth anniversary of, it is Dayananda Saraswati. And second one, we celebrated It is 150th anniversary of establishment of which organization? It is Arya Samaj. Now who established Arya Samaj? Dayananda Saraswati. 150th, it is 150th anniversary of establishment of which one? Arya Samaj. Arya Samaj. Now shall we discuss one by one now? Shall we discuss one by one? The first one about, we call it as Dayananda Saraswati. Dayananda Saraswati. Now this Dayananda Saraswati, now we are celebrating which one? 150th birth anniversary of what? 150th birth anniversary of, we call it as 150th birth anniversary of, we call it as Arya Samaj, and we are celebrating 200th the birth anniversary of what? Dayananda Saraswati. This is about our first one. Now second one here is, now when did this Dayananda Saraswati, it has been born in which state? What's the birth of Dayananda Saraswati? The birth of Dayananda Saraswati is, we call it as 1824. 1824 in a state called as Gujarat. In a state called as, we call it as, in a state called as, which state? Gujarat. Now sir, what are the principles of Dayananda Saraswati? What are the principles of Dayananda Saraswati? Now his principles are two. One we call it as go back to Vedas. Go back to, we call it as what? Vedas. Go back to Vedas. The go back to Vedas, first one. And second one, his principle we call it as Shuddhi movement. Now what do you mean by go back to Vedas? Now we need to respect, we need to consider Vedas as the superior form of laws for Hindus. It is, we need to consider Vedas as the ultimate law to be followed, ultimate principles to be followed. But while respecting this Vedas, we need to remove the different superstitious issues or superstitious beliefs. Understand, while going back to Vedas, we need to give adequate respect. While going back to Vedas, we need to remove different forms of what? Social evils. Now which is that social evils we need to remove? It is first one, he encouraged or he talked about, we call it as abolition of, we call it as untouchability. Abolition of untouchability. Second one we call it as widow remarriage. He encouraged widow remarriage. He abolished idol worship. He abolished, which one? He abolished idol worship, child marriages, and the fourth one, he discouraged the different, we call it as complex rituals also. He discouraged which one? The complex rituals also. Complex rituals. And that we call it as go back to Vedas. Nothing but it is moving to Vedas and giving adequate due respect to the Vedas was a part of, we call it as. See, he did not talk about Sati boss. Sati has been talked about by Raja Ramon Roy. Mat yella marju marbodi mat. Again, not even child marriages also. Again, child marriages has been talked about by. It is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. And that you should know. It is majorly we call it as untouchability, followed by we call widow remarriage, followed by idol worship, superstitious beliefs has been discouraged. And second one we call it as, he talked about Shuddhi movement also. He talked about Shuddhi movement. What do you mean by Shuddhi movement? It is reconvert back to Hinduism. Now if you have converted to some other form of religion, either to Buddhism or to Jainism or to Islam or any form of religion, it is convert back to Hinduism. Now converting back to Hinduism via purified rituals, and that we call it as Shuddhi movement. Shuddhi movement method talks about what? Reconverting back to we call it as Hinduism. Reconverting back to we call it as Hinduism. Exactly, yes. Back to Hinduism we call it as the major one. Now after this, now who was the first person to give a word called as, to give a major word called as Swaraj? Now who was the first person to give a word called as Swaraj? It is the Dayananda Saraswati. In which year? In which year? In the year we call it as, it is majorly we call it as, now in and around we call it as 1870s. In the year 1870s, he gave a word called as, the word called as Swaraj. The word called as Swaraj for the first time has been given by, it is Dayananda Saraswati in the year 1876. Or to be precise, we call it as 1870s, the word called as Swaraj. The word called as the Swaraj, the word called as Swadeshi, all these things has been used by, we call it as, the major one we call it as Dayananda Saraswati. The word called as the Swaraj, the Shuddhi movement, all the things has been majorly talked about by Dayananda Saraswati. Yes or no? Now major one, it is after this. After this comes our major one called as the different movements. The different movements. Now major one we call it as Arya Samaj has been started by. Dayanand says, what about Brahmo Samaj? What about Brahmo Samaj? Who started this Brahmo Samaj? Brahmo Samaj has been started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Brahmo Samaj has been started by, we call it as Ram Mohan Roy. Now for this Ram Mohan Roy, Raja, the title has been given by, it is Akbar II. Akbar II. Now who is called as father of modern Renaissance? Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Yes. And after this, you should also know about AMU, Aligarh Muslim University. Now who is the founder? Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, exactly yes. Akbar II, Raja the title, exactly yes. At least this you must know while dealing with respect to, we call it as, it is the reformers or Renaissance movements. Exactly. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan in the year 1875. Now Aligarh Muslim University, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan talked about, it is both protection of my culture, at the same time it is inculcation of English. Westernization. He talked about both the things. And second one, Arya Samaj has been established by. Dayanand says, what about, it is Dayanand Anglo-Vedic Society. By Lala Lajpat Rai. Dayanand Anglo-Vedic Society has been established by, it is Lala Lajpat Rai. Lala Lajpat Rai. Now who is called as Punjab Kesari? Lala Lajpat Rai. Who are called as extremists? Lal Bal Pal Ghosh. Who are called as extremists? Lal Bal Pal Ghosh. Lala Lajpat Rai. Now Lala Lajpat Rai died in which year? Against which revolt? Against the Simon Commission. Against the Simon Commission, against the Lathi charges, he'll die. Lal Bal Pal Ghosh. You should be aware. Exactly, yes. Now what's the answer for this? Online, I hope you guys are getting the current affairs. Exactly, yes. 1928, again Simon Commission. He revolted against all the white people of Simon Commission. All white people. See, everything should be in your tips, boss. No need of going back and revising again. It should be in your tips no matter what, if you are going for an exam. That should be the idea or logic. Now, first one we call it as the Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati founded the Arya Samaj in, we call it as 1875, to reform the Hindu society by reviving the Vedic ideals and promoting, we call it as social equality. Yes or no? It is, yes, first one. Now this Arya Samaj has been established in 1875 in, we call it as in Bombay. In Bombay, that you should be aware. Now you should also know about two important principles. What are the two important principles? Go back to Vedas. Go back to Vedas. And second one we call it as Shuddhi movement. Converting back to Hinduism. That we call it as, it is as principles. The Arya Samaj aimed to combine Vedic teachings with idol worship. Idol worship or abolition of idol worship? Abolition of idol worship, be cautious, abolition of idol worship and ritual sacrifices to strengthen traditional Hindu practices. Reasoning is wrong, assertion is correct. Nothing but C. Yes or no? Yes. This is about, we call it Arya Samaj. Why Arya Samaj was in use? Why Arya Samaj? It is majorly we are celebrating 150 year or 150th anniversary of establishment of, we call it as the Arya Samaj. That you should be aware. And second one you should know about the Vedanta philosophy has been. It is Vedanta philosophy. Now you should also know about, while dealing with respect to this topic, you should talk about, majorly we call it as Advaita philosophy. Advaita, Vishishta Dvaita, Dvaita, Neo-Vedanta philosophy. Now Advaita philosophy has been started by, it is Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya, you should be aware, Shankaracharya, Advaita philosophy. Advaita means non-dualism, monoism. Vishnu is the ultimate, we call it as the ultimate protector, ultimate creator and ultimate destructor. Now opposite of Advaita we call it as what? Dvaita, two things. Now it is the creator is different and the people are different. And this Dvaita philosophy has been given by Madhvacharya, created by Madhvacharya, majorly from Karnataka, Madhvacharya from Udupi district. ಅದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಬರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು it is the majorly Vishishta Dvaita. It is Ramanujacharya, Vishishta Advaita. Now we have established Statue of Equality. Where? Hyderabad. The Statue of Equality dedicated to Ramanujacharya. And fourth one we call it as Neo-Vedanta philosophy has been given by, we call it as Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda. Neo-Vedanta philosophies. Neo-Vedanta philosophies. You should be aware. Exactly. Yes. Shakti, Vishishta Dvaita philosophy by Basavanna. By Basavanna you should also know that it is Basavanna's philosophy. Majorly worshipper of, we call it as, it is Lingayata community. Basavanna, you should know about this. Worshipper of Shiva, worshipper of the Shiva. They were Linga, and the other thing they are called as Lingayites. Then this is about our major one called as about Arya Samaj, as well as we call it as the Brahmo Samaj. We have talked about Dayananda Anglo-Vedic Society, or we have also talked about the some, we call it as the reformers also. Some reformers also. Done. The next one we call it as nutrient-based subsidy scheme. Now while discussing about this topic, we will talk about the complete end-to-end about fertilizers. End-to-end, one question fix. Now with respect to nutrient-based subsidy scheme, Why this was in news? Why this was in news? Now recently cabinet approves the cost for nutrient based subsidy scheme. The first one, why we call it as, why this topic was in news? Now recently cabinet approves nutrient based subsidy scheme for, now which crops? Now majorly we call it as, we call it as Rabi crops. Be cautious, fertilizers for Rabi crops for the period of 2025-26. Now how many seasons do we have? We have 3 seasons, 1 we call as. Is the news part clear? The news here is recently cabinet has approved the nutrient based subsidy scheme for, we call it as Rabi season. Rabi season. Now exactly yes. Yes. Rachana, did not get your message. Okay. Now with respect to, we call it as a cabinet has approved, it is the nutrient based subsidy scheme for which season? It is, we call it as Rabi season. Now there are 3 types of, we call it as, the 3 types of seasons we have. Now first one we are talking about, which is the season? We call it as Kharif. Second one we call it as Rabi, and the third one we call it what? The third one we call it as Zaid. Now what do you mean by Kharif crop means? The monsoon season. The Kharif means we call it as monsoon, Rabi means winter, and Zaid means we call it as summer crop. Zaid means we call it as summer crop. Yes or no, boss? Done. Now my simple question is, sir, why we need to provide subsidy to the fertilizers? Why we need to provide subsidy to farmers for purchasing of fertilizers? Why we need to provide? Because to increase the productivity and to make the fertilizer cost affordable, available and accessible. Now to make the fertilizers available, affordable and we call it as accessible, we need to make that. Now to make this affordable, we have 2 important schemes here. One we call it as nutrient based subsidy scheme, and second one we call it as urea based subsidy scheme. First one we call it as NBS, and second one we call it as which one? UBS. What does UBS means? It is urea based subsidy scheme. Now my first question is this NBS has been launched in which year? Launched in which year? 2010. 2010. Launched in the year 2010. Second one, urea based subsidy scheme. New urea based subsidy scheme has been launched in the year 2015. Yes or no? Now which ministry? It is Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers and Agriculture, be cautious. It is which ministry? Ministry of, we call it as Chemicals and Fertilizers. Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Again Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Done? Third one we call it as, now which all fertilizers are being covered as a part of NBS and UBS? Now how many fertilizers are being covered? It covers 22 varieties of fertilizers. It includes 22 varieties of fertilizers. 22 varieties of fertilizer. What about urea? Only one. That is urea. Only one, that is we call urea, and that's the reason we call it as urea based subsidy scheme. Urea based subsidy scheme. Fourth one, what type of scheme is this? Is it central sector scheme or central sponsor scheme? Is it sharing or is it 100% borne by the government? Now both. Now what type of scheme is this? Nutrient based subsidy scheme is a centrally sponsored. It is on the basis of what? Sharing. On the basis of sharing. Now what about urea based subsidy scheme? It is central sector. What does central sector means? 100% it is borne by 100% it is borne by central government. Yes or no? Fourth one, now subsidy is being provided on the basis of what? Here on the basis of, we call it as concentration, nutrient. On the basis of nutrient, subsidy is provided. On the basis of nutrient, what is being provided? Subsidy is provided. What about in urea? On the basis of product. On the basis of urea product, urea bag. On the basis of urea bag. Yes or no, boss? Done? On the basis of urea bag. See, once done, done for life. You should never revise this again. That should be your knowledge and your attention also. Yes or no? Yes. This is about NBS and UPS. Done. Next one getting called as fertilizers. Facts. Facts about fertilizers. Which country is the second largest producer of fertilizers? India after China. First one we call it as China and India. India is the third largest producer of fertilizers. India is the third largest producer of what? Fertilizers. Third largest producer of fertilizer, exactly on and exactly yes, yes. Third largest producer of fertilizers, yes. Fourth one, which is the second largest subsidy of the government after food, fertilizer subsidy. After food subsidy, which is the second largest subsidy? Fertilizer subsidy. Fertilizer subsidy. Fourth one, we call it as this fertilizers comes under 8 core industries. One of the 8 core industries. Fifth one. The fifth one, what is the ideal usage? What should the ideal usage of fertilizers? 4:2:1 NPK ratio. Nitrogen, phosphorus and potash ratio should be in the range of 4:2:1. But how much are we using? 8:3:1. Usages 8:3:1 NPK ratio. Nitrogen, phosphorus and potash. Nitrogen, phosphorus and potash. Exactly online. Potash. Done? Is this part clear? Inu beka? Bekandre initiatives. Initiatives related to fertilizers. Initiatives related to fertilizers. The first initiative we call it as the nano urea. Nano urea. The world's first nano urea plant has been established at where? World's first nano urea plant. Where, boss? It's in Kalol. It's in Kalol, not in Jamnagar. It's in Kalol. It's in Gujarat. The world's first nano urea. Nano urea, nano liquid urea, nano liquid DAP. Both are in where? Gujarat. Second one? Second one in Karnataka, Devnalli Taluk. Second one in, we call it as Karnataka. Established by, we call it as IFCO. Established by IFCO. What is IFCO? The Indian Farm Fertilizer Cooperative. Indian Farm Fertilizer Cooperative, largest fertilizer cooperative in India. Largest fertilizer cooperative in India. First one. Second one we call it as Nano Gold. What is Nano Gold? Sulfur coated urea. Sulfur coated urea. Third one PM BJP. PM BJP, One Nation One Fertilizer. One Nation One Fertilizer. Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Urvik Pariyojana. Bharatiya Jan Urvik Pariyojana. One Nation One Fertilizer. We need to sell the different fertilizers under a brand name called as which brand? Bharat. Under the Bharat brand, we need to sell all the fertilizers. We need to sell all the fertilizers under a tag called as which tag? Bharat. 80% should be printed with what? Bharat logo and tag. 80% of the bag should be printed with, we call it as Bharat logo. Should be printed with, we call it as Bharat logo. Yes, Bharat logo means it is if it is a fertilizer bag. 80% should be printed with what? Bharat logo. And we need to sell it under where? Bharat brand itself. Whoever manufactures in India, they need to sell it under a brand name called as Bharat logo itself, and that initiative we call it as PM BJP. And you should also know about PM Pranam. The PM we call it as Pranam Yojana. What is PM Pranam? Again related to fertilizers. Again related to fertilizers, subsidizing the states. Subsidizing the states to limit, we call it as to limit the chemical fertilizers. Has been launched in 2023 budget. Has been launched in 2023 Union budget. This has been launched in 2022. All by Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. And we also have an initiative called as Neem coated urea. We also have an initiative called as Neem coated urea. Done with the game. Yes. Exactly, Devanali, the second one, the South India's first. The South India's first, world's second largest. The nano urea liquid plant has been established in Devanali Taluk. It's in, we call it as the Karnataka. First one, it's in Kalol, Gujarat. The world's first nano liquid urea plant. Nano liquid urea plant in Kalol, Gujarat. That you should know. Exactly, boss. Exactly, if you want, you can also add about IFCO also. IFCO, they have established the first overseas plant in Illy, Brazil. IFCO's overseas, outside country, has been established in Brazil exactly on exactly years. But all the things are not required, Saku. Done? Will you solve the question now? Done? Okay. Now coming to this question, first one we call it as which of the following is are incorrect? Because of which of the following is are incorrect. Now regarding nutrient based subsidy scheme, the nutrient based subsidy scheme has been launched by, I can say launched in 2010, correct? Is it by Ministry of Agriculture or not? Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. One must be there. If one must be there, 2 and 3 must go. And D should also go. Now you should only check either second or third one is correct. Under the NBF scheme, the fixed subsidy per kg of nutrient like NPS, nitrogen, phosphorus and potash and sulfur is provided to manufacturers. This is correct. Urea is included or urea is excluded? Now for urea, I have already said that we have a separate scheme. Urea is being excluded. Now if that's the case, what's the answer for this? Got the point. Done. This is about, we call it as the nutrient based subsidy scheme and urea based subsidy scheme. Clear? Next one we call it as, the next one, transit oriented development. Expect a question this year, the recent concept. The transit oriented development, exactly, it has been excluded. It has been excluded, exactly, yes. 1 and 3 are correct. Online exactly perfect, yes. Thank you, yes, yes. Next one, transit oriented development. Now we'll see that one by one. Now what is transit? Transit means transportation. Transportation oriented development we need to take place. Now in India, if we are developing a particular city, now first transportation should be ready or development should be ready? What do you think first? Now in India, the other way around happens. First development and later on there is a transportation. And the other reason we are seeing so much of what? Congested roads. But when you go to places like Jaipur, when you go to places like Mysore, or when you go to places like Chennai or Kolkata, now in such cities, first transportation will be ready and later on what? Later on we call it as the development takes place. But on the same manner, it is a particular city is going for innovation. And that particular city we call it as Delhi. Now Delhi has become the first, we call it as city. Now why this was in news? Why this was in news? Now in the last week also we have discussed about Delhi. Why we have discussed about Delhi in the last week? It is because of cloud seeding. It's a failure one. And the report is also out now. Now to occur cloud seeding, minimum 15 to 18% of moisture content is mandatory. But I have said in the last class, because of inverse normal lapse rate, it is less than, we call it as 10%. Now if it is less than 10%, I have already said that it's a failure one. And it has also been confirmed by IMD also. Confirmed by IMD also, but wastage of 320 crore rupees for this cloud seeding. It's a waste. And along with that things, in the atmosphere, there is an addition of, we call it as silver iodide as well as potassium iodide has been added to the atmosphere. That's the big major challenge now. That's the challenge now, boss. Yes. Now, sir, all these things are fine, sir, all these things are fine. But my question, the simple question here is, now why this TOD, the transit oriented development was in use? Now the transit oriented development, recently, now Delhi Development Authority has become the India's first city to undertake the development, we call it as transit oriented development. To take an initiative, we call it as transit oriented development. Sir, my simple question is, now is the news part clear? Now if it is clear, what is transit oriented development? What is transit oriented development? Now think that this is my city. I'll take it as, this is Delhi or NCT Delhi, National Capital Territory of Delhi. Now sir, now in this Delhi, now we are facing a problem called as, what all problems? Now in Delhi we are facing a problem called as pollution. We are facing a challenge called as the traffic. And we are facing a challenge called as the huge amount of time consumption to move from one region to the other. But now we are coming out with a solution called as transit oriented development. Nothing but we are planning it to construct huge amount of public transportation, advanced transportation. We are planning for advanced transportation. When the transportation is timely available, when the transportation is nearly present towards my residential buildings, will I use public transport or will I take the private transport? What do you think? Now if the public transport is, everything is ready, now which one do you prefer? Will you prefer public or will you prefer private? Public. Now for that, it is this Delhi government is planning for huge integration of, we call it as the public transportation across Delhi. Across Delhi, they are planning for, we call it as public transportation. Now sir, if it is public transportation, it has developed, don't you think it automatically discourages private transportation? Now when there is a discouragement of, we call it as private vehicles, automatically pollution will come down, congestion will come down, traffic will come down, and time investment will also come down. Yes or no, boss? This is the first one. Along with that things, it is near to the public transport itself, they are planning for, we call it as what? They are planning for construction of buildings, apartments, residential buildings, commercial spaces, recreational activities. I can aram se get into this vehicle or transport and I can get in near to my office. Or if I want, I can get it into my recreational homes, or I can get it into our commercial spaces to buy different items, shopping malls. Now they are planning for high integration of, we call it as transit oriented development. Nothing but it is, what does transit means? Transit means transportation. What transportation? Public transportation. Oriented development means it is, now public transportation is at the heart of city development. Public transportation is at what? Heart of, we call it as, public transportation is heart of city development. When public transportation develops, along with that things, we are also planning for, near to the transport sector, we are planning for establishment which all things? Residential buildings, commercial spaces, third one, recreational activities, schools, colleges, shopping malls, all these things near to the, we call it as public transport. Now take an example of Bengaluru now. Now is Chandralevt has adequate public transport? Now think that I am coming from Yeshwantpura. Now from Yeshwantpura I need to get down at Atiguppem and I need to walk. But this discourages me what? This discourages me to take up public transportation. But automatically I'll take private. But think that if there is a direct train from, it is Yeshwantpura to, it is Chandralevt, within shorter period of time, at shorter cost or cheaper cost, now which one will I prefer? Public. And that oriented development we call it as transit oriented development. First transportation develops and later on development happens. Either the other round. It is first we need to develop our transportation rather than development. Rather than developing the first development rather than transportation. Other way round should not happen. Rather first transportation should be ready and later on we need to go for development aspects. And for that, which state has become the, or I can say, which we call it as the metropolitan area, or which city has become the first city to go for? We call it as, it is the major transit oriented development. Delhi Development Authority. Delhi Development Authority has become the first, India's first, we call it as city, to take up an initiative called as transit oriented development. In transit oriented development, which one is being given more priority? Public transport. Public transport is being given more authority, and along with that public transport, near to public transport locations, there is a construction of, we call it as residential buildings, and second one, recreational activities like Wonderla, and third one, shopping malls like Orion malls, shopping malls, followed by that commercial spaces, offices. All this will be established near to the public transport. And that public transport is faster, cheaper, as well as affordable also. Now when all the things are ready, automatically we are being encouraged to take up, we call it as public transport, and discourage which one? Private transport. And that is the major agenda of this, we call it as, it is the DDS, the role is to launch the transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development. Now shall we see a little bit about Delhi? First one, about Delhi. Delhi is our national capital. NCT Delhi, National Capital Territory of Delhi, via which constitutional amendment? It is via, we call it as 69th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1991. 69th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1991, first one. Second one, thus Delhi has been declared as UT, Union Territory with legislature. With legislature. What is the MLA size? 60 MLAs. How many can become ministers? According to 91st Constitutional Amendment Act, now only Delhi can become what percentage? 10%. Other than this, 15%. Other than this, rest, the different states and UTs, 15%. Other than Delhi, other states and central government will be having 15% of lower house. 15% of lower house. Now if there is a legislature, we'll be having Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor. Fourth one. It is okay, separate High Court also, okay. If that's the case, even Jammu and Kashmir also High Court. Separate High Court, okay, done. And after this, now after this comes the major one, we call it as, now Delhi majorly we call it as, now huge amount of pollution, majorly during winters. Now to reduce that, we have went for what? Cloud seeding. Cloud seeding. Exactly, yes. Cloud seeding also. This is about, we call it as, this is about what? The Delhi related part also. Done? Okay. The question about transit-oriented development aims to reduce the dependency on which one? Private vehicles by promoting high-density mixed development and public transport hubs also. Is clear? Second one, TOD encourages expansion of cities away from transit stations to reduce congestion in core areas. Now what do you think? Now, does it encourage the expansion of cities away from transit stations now to congestion in the core areas? Obviously, congestion will start to reduce. Now, why congestion will start to reduce in the core areas? Now, this is called as suburban. Moving away from the core areas, we call it as suburbans. That is not transit-oriented development. Now, transit-oriented development, we want to reduce the congestion in the core area itself. How can we reduce that? By taking up public transportation. By taking up public transportation, we can reduce traffic in core areas. Yes or no? Answer is automatically the C. Next one, the concept of cheetahs. Concept of cheetahs. Now what do you mean by cheetahs, boss? What do you mean by cheetahs? And the first question is, why do you want cheetahs? Why news? Now I have already said that there are two important news. One, we call it as we have signed an agreement with government. Botswana government to send how many cheetahs to India? It is 8 cheetahs. 8 cheetahs. And second one, we are planning for or recently, Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister has announced what? The third home for cheetahs. The third home for cheetahs. Which is the third home? Nauradehi Wildlife Sanctuary as the third home of cheetahs after which one? After Kuno National Park, it's in again Madhya Pradesh. And second one, Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary, again it's in Madhya Pradesh. Nauradehi, it's also in where? Madhya Pradesh. Done? This is the first news. Second news here is why we want cheetahs, boss, first of all. Why we want cheetahs? It is, why do we want cheetahs? Because our Asian cheetahs has become extinct in 1952. First one. Now, our Asian cheetahs has become extinct in which year? Extinct in 1952. Has become extinct in 1952. Now what is the location or geography which is required for, we call it as leopards? Grasslands. Why grasslands? Because these are the fastest running mammals of the world. Nothing but geography. Which is the geography which is required? Geography, we call it as grasslands. To protect the grasslands, leopards and cheetahs are considered as what? Considered as flagship species of which ecosystem? Grasslands. Now to protect this grassland, we want cheetah and leopard also. Anyways, we have leopard in India, but we have cheetahs. We should have cheetahs or we want cheetahs. But to get the cheetahs to India, we have signed an agreement with 3 countries. Under the project, we call it as Project Cheetah. Under the project, we call it as Cheetah. Now this Project Cheetah has been launched by which ministry? In which year? Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, supported by NTCA. Supported by, we call it as NTCA. Supported by, we call it as NTCA. What's NTCA? National Tiger Conservation Authority. Established under which act? WPA Act of 1972. There is no NTC Act, boss. Established in the year, we call it as 2005-06 by amending WPA Act of 1972. By amending WPA Act of 1972. This project has been launched in which year? 2022. 2022 to get 8 cheetahs from Namibia, 12 cheetahs from, we call it as South Africa. It is, we got 8 cheetahs from Namibia and 12 cheetahs from South Africa, and now we are planning for 8 cheetahs from where? 8 cheetahs from Botswana. 8 cheetahs from Botswana. Now it is considered to be it is world's first. This project, it is considered to be what? World's first transferring above what? Mammals. The top carnivorous from one continent to the other, from Africa towards the Asia, and that is the reason it is called as world's first and world's largest intercontinental transfer of top carnivores, and that is the reason this project is called as world's first. Transferring above, we call it as top carnivores from one continent to the other. From which continent to which continent? Africa to Asia. And that's the reason it is called as world's first intercontinental transfer of, we call it as top carnivorous animals. Top carnivorous animals or top carnivorous mammals. That we call it as Project Cheetah. Sir, my simple question is, now what is the IUCN status of Africa and Asian cheetah? It is African cheetah and Asian cheetah. Now, Asian cheetah, it is present only in where? Iran. But we are not aware that it is Pakka or not. But we are not sure about it. Now, what is the IUCN status? Critically endangered. CR. Now, if it is CR, can I send from one country to other? No. But if Africa is sending from one country to other, what should be the IUCN status? It must be vulnerable, or it must be lesser than that. If not, IUCN will never approve these projects. Hope you're getting it. Now, the other reason African cheetah has been declared as vulnerable, and it is being transferred from one country to the other. Done. And fourth one, these cheetahs are considered to be the fastest running animals. Fastest running the top carnivorous. Fastest running top carnivorous. Done. This is about our first one. And second one given called as Naura Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary. Next one given called as Naura Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary. Now, what is the location of Naura Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary? First one, location we call it as, it is present in where? Madhya Pradesh. Present in Madhya Pradesh. Second one, now it is present between which two rivers? It is present between which two rivers? Narmada towards the south and towards the north, Yamuna. And this region we call it as Naura Dehi Wildlife Sanctuary. One of the largest wildlife sanctuary in India. Naura Dehi, it is considered to be what? One of the largest. We call it as largest wildlife sanctuary. One of the largest wildlife sanctuary. My simple question is, what is the geography or what is the forest which is present in this? The Naura Dehi? What type of soil which is present? It is the major Naura Dehi. It has mixed dry deciduous forest. Mixed dry deciduous forest. And second one, what is the soil which is present here? Mix of all the soil. Red soil, alluvial soil, black soil. Mix of all the soils. Mix of all the soils. Exactly as this. Okay. Now the online are asking about, now which is the largest, it is the or again the fastest running mammal. Is it jaguar or cheetah? Cheetah. It's no doubt at all, it is cheetah. Yes, yes. Rest are well to go or good to go. That's what we call it as Navradai Wildlife Sanctuary. Navradai Wildlife Sanctuary. Now we'll discuss about two questions, one on Navradai and second we'll discuss about one question on, we call it as the project Cheetah also. Regarding Botswana. Yes, yes. Yes, online, perfect. All good. Done? Okay. What done for this? Now with reference to the Navradai Wildlife Sanctuary, consider following statements. Now Navradai Wildlife Sanctuary lies in the upper the Vindhyan range and acts as a corridor between Panna and Satpura, the tiger reserves. It is, now I said that it is above Vindhyas, nothing but above Narmada. Above Narmada means above, it is Vindhyan range. And acts as corridor between Panna and Satpura, first one is correct. Nearly 3/4 of the sanctuary falls under, is it Godavari basin? No, boss. While the remaining, it is 1/4 in Narmada basin, again second one is incorrect. They are asking which one is correct? Only one. Done? And second one. Okay. What is for this? Okay. Now Project Cheetah was launched in 2022 as India's first intercontinental wildlife transportation project. But anyways, it is wrong. Now if first one is incorrect, see assertions are easier. Now you should know at least one statement, reasoning. In 2022, 8 cheetahs were being brought from Namibia and I said 12 has been brought from South Africa and now we are planning for 8 cheetahs from which country? At Botswana, that will arrive by December 25 under same project. Yes, done. This is about, we call it as, this is about which one? It is, we call it as the major about Project Cheetah. Now is it end to end, is it clear or not? Yes or no, boss? Now, next one we call it as the Project Thrishul or Exercise Thrishul. Now, first one, what does Thrishul means? What does three means? The trilateral services, Thrishul. It is why it was in use. Now, recently, the operation exercise has been conducted on the border between India and Pakistan. The Thrishul project has been conducted between, we call it as, which one? India and we call it as Pakistan. India and Pakistan. Yes. Now, sir, the second one, we call it a second one. Now, this is conducted by which all the forces, military forces. Now majorly it includes the three services, Army, Navy and third one, Air Force. Done. Supported by, we call it as, supported by BSF and Coast Guard. Supported by, exactly online, supported by BSF and we call it as Coast Guard. Supported by BSF. Now why BSF? Border Security Force, which is present on the border between India and Pakistan. That is the reason BSF, and also supported by the Indian Coast Guard. Supported by Indian Coast Guard. Now majorly, sir, majorly why Thrishul has been launched? Now this Thrishul has been launched to secure our borders. Majorly after Operation Sindoor. After Operation Sindoor or attack on, we call it as majorly Pahalgam, now it is our border, we need to safeguard and we need to secure it. We need to save it and we need to secure it majorly with respect to the border disputed regions. Disputed regions. Now for that, military exercise has been taken care by the trice officers. Now along with that things, which all equipments? Along with that things, which all equipments has been showcased? Which all equipments has been showcased? Now we showcase different defense equipments. We showcased about, we call it as the different missiles. Missiles which also showcase about BrahMos missile. We showcased about, we call it as the majorly, the Iron Dome which has been taken up from, we call it as major Israel. And we have also showcased about the tank, Arjuna tank. We showcased about, we call it LCA Tejas. We showcased about Rafale. We showcased about guns. We showcased about the bulletproof jackets. All these things we showcase majorly to protect our which border? It is India and Pakistan border, majorly the region which is in disputes. Now where the region is dispute between India and Pakistan? Majorly with respect to POK. Pak occupied Kashmir or between LOC, line of control. And we also have a dispute between, we call it as Sar Creek. Where is Sar Creek? It's in Gujarat. Now majorly, we tested majorly saying that it is defense should be safe and secure along our borders. Along our borders, and that project we call it as Operation Thrishul or Exercise Thrishul. Exercise, the Thrishul is all about. Done? Exactly Anand, exactly as Gujarat. Sar Creek, Gujarat, yes. Done? Okay. Now with reference to tri-service exercise Thrishul, consider the following statements. The exercise Thrishul 2025 is led by Indian Navy and coordinated by it is Western Naval Command. We'll see. Second one, the exercise aims to validate the joint operational procedures and enhance interoperability among which all things? Among the three forces. Second one must be there. Now they are talking about which one is incorrect. Incorrect. Now they are asking about only one, only two, or all the three. Third one, it is being conducted across the Sar Creek and desert sector of Gujarat and Rajasthan, extending into northern Arabian Sea. Now, all the three statements are correct, but the question is asking about incorrect. Which is incorrect? D is incorrect. Yes or no? It is about the three, the military forces, Army, Navy and Air Force. I have said that we are showcasing across all the disputed regions. And a third major important one you should know about, it is headed by whom? Headed by Indian Navy, majorly Western Naval Command. Where is Western Naval Command? It's in Mumbai. Western Naval Command, it's in Mumbai. Yes or no? It is majorly, it is supported by Western Naval, the command, the Navy. Yes. On in exactly, I hope it is clear. Okay, yes. Done? Okay. Last topic for the day. That we call it as ICC Women's Cup. Now while discussing about ICC Women's Cup, which all things you should know? First and the foremost one, we call it as, this year for sure question, ICC Women's Cup. First one, women created history by winning the first medal. Women's created history by winning what? By winning, we call it as India's first ICC Women's Cup. Yes or no, boss? First one. For the first time, we have won this. Since 1973. Since 1973. Now we'll see that. Now second major important one. Now, what is this ICC? International Cricket Council. Now it is organized by ICC. Yes or no? Organized by ICC. Since which year? Since 1973. Since 1973, this ICC, the World Cup, it has been organized once in how many years? Once in 4 years. This is organized once in how many years? Once in, we call it as 4 years. Once in 4 years. Yes or no, boss? Now my simple question is, which edition is this? It is 13th edition. The Eshne edition appa antandre, this edition we call it as 13th edition. Done? 13th edition took place in where? It is 13th edition. Now who was the host country? India and Sri Lanka. Host country we call it as, which is the host country? Host country we call it as India and we call it as Sri Lanka. India and Sri Lanka is the host country. Now it took place at where? It took place at where? Took place in Mumbai under we call it as DY the Patel Stadium. Yes or no, boss? DY Patel Stadium. Deputy Patel Stadium. It's in Mumbai. Now Indian women played against whom? Who was the runner-up? Now South Africa. We won by how many runs? 52 runs. We won by 52 runs. We won by 52 runs. Against South Africa. Against South Africa. Yes. Now who has been given the manner of the match? It is manner of the match. Manner of the match we call it as manner of the, it is match we call it as Shafali Verma. Shafali Verma has been given the manner of the match. Manner of the tournament, complete tournament, it is Deepti Sharma has been given the, it is major one we call it as. Now who has been given? Who has been given we call it as the manner of the match. For this match we call it as Shafali Verma, and second one we call it as the manner of the tournament, we call it as Deepti Sharma. Next one. Now which country has won maximum number of times? Australia 7 times, UK 4 times, New Zealand 1 time, India 1 time. Now, Australia has won by how many times? As won by, we call it as, I have already said they have been won by. It is 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Australia won by 7 times. UK won by how many times? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one time New Zealand in 2000 and one time India 2025. 2025. Yes or no, boss? Done. Is this part clear? It is. India has won the 2025. Now 2025. Which category? Women's category. Now this has been started since 1973. Which is the edition? 13th edition. Now who was the host country? India and Sri Lanka was the host country. Who was the runner-up? South Africa. We won by how many runs? 52 runs. Now what's the location of this final tournament? It is in D.Y. Patil Stadium. It's in Mumbai. It's in Mumbai. Manner of the match. It is Shafali Verma. And with respect to the tournament of the match, it is, we call it as that Deepti Sharma has been given it is the tournament, manner of the tournament, exactly yes. And it has been organized once in 4 years. Observe this, 73, 78, 4 years, 4 years. Now majorly, it is organized once in, we call it as the 4 years. Done. This is all with respect to our, this week's, the weekly current affairs. Done. Yes. Now we'll solve a question and we'll end it. Exactly, Patil Stadium, exactly yes. 13th one, Mumbai, Australia number 7. 7 times they won, highest number. Second one it is by, we call it as the England or UK has won by 4 times. New Zealand 1 time, India 1 time. Done. Next week, we are left with some topics that I'll cover in the next week. That majorly Bahubali, CMS 03, GSAT 7R, I'll discuss that. Lokapal I'll discuss next week. I'll discuss about cyclone also. Yes, I'll discuss about virus which has impacted, we call it as the elephant. Recently there has been a death, that I'll cover next week. And I'll also talk about Maldives has become the world's first banning up of tobacco with respect to intergenerational tobacco. When you were born after 2007, all these 5 topics I'll cover next week. Done? What's the answer for this? Now with reference to ICC Women's Cricket World Cup 2025, consider the following statements. That 2025 edition was jointly hosted by India and Sri Lanka with a final held at, we call it as Dr. D.Y. Patil Stadium, Navi Mumbai. Second one, India won its first ever ICC Women's ODI World Cup title by defeating, it's not Australia, it is South Africa in the final match. Third one, Shafali Verma has been named as the player of the tournament of manner of the match. She is the manner of the match. And while Deepti, I have just interchanged this. Interchanged. Now they are asking which of the following are correct. Now only one is correct. I have just interchanged that. Done. This is all for today. Any doubts from today's class? Yes or no? Online, any doubts? Yes, yes. Exactly, yes. It is. Thank you. See you all next week. Done? Okay. Online, thank you. Before just leaving, just give a like. If you have enjoyed the class. Exactly. Statement 3 is ulta. Yes. Online, Sunita, M, thank you so much. PT Deepti, thank you. Moses, thank you. Rachna, thank you. Hope you guys have enjoyed the class. If yes, just give a like before leaving. Yes, yes. Thank you. See you all next week.
very long.